Casus Belli. A casus belli, occasion for war, is an act or event that provokes or is used to justify war. A casus belli involves direct offenses or threats against the nation declaring the war, whereas a casus foederis involves offenses or threats against its ally, usually one bound by a mutual defense pact. Either may be considered an act of war. We've all seen the interview from last month, where Vladimir Putin says that the reason for his invasion of Ukraine was that Ukraine was harboring neo-Nazis.
Достоверно известно, что все это происходит по рекомендации иностранных консультантов, прежде всего американских советников. Еще раз обращаюсь к военнослужащим вооруженных сил Украины. Не позволяйте неонацистам и бендеровцам использовать ваших детей, ваших жен и стариков в качестве живого щита. Берите власть в свои руки. Похоже, нам с вами будет легче договориться, чем с этой шайкой наркоманов и неонацистов, которая засела в Киеве и взяла в заложники весь украинский народ.
What he said sounded like madness to most of the world. Putin invaded Ukraine in a land grab, and it sounds like he's a madman because he's saying Ukraine is overrun by Nazis, but the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, is Jewish. Why is Putin saying that a Jewish leader serves Nazis in the Ukraine? So that this was widely reported. You can see the date, February 25th, 2022. And he appears to be quite mad. What I was curious about was what led to the decision by Putin to invade Ukraine. Was it just this assertion of neo-Nazis? Let's follow the chronology here using ordinary news stories and headlines. Let's go back to 2009, Vice President Biden's speech in Ukraine. The United States also supports Ukraine's deepening ties to NATO and to the European Union, but again, we recognize they are your decisions, your choices, not ours, whether you choose the EU or seek to or NATO. We recognize that how far and how fast to proceed on your choices is, again, a uniquely Ukrainian choice. It is not ours. Let's fast forward to 2019. Donald Trump placed a congratulatory phone call to the new president of the Ukraine, Zelensky. But let's go back to 2019. The American news media and the Democratic Party, along with members of the State Department, had a specific message about what they thought good Ukraine foreign policy should be. Marie Yovanovitch was the ambassador to Ukraine, first by the Obama-Biden administration, and then under the Trump administration, where she was fired by President Donald Trump. I'm going to read for you her testimony in 2019 before the House Committee of Representative Adam Schiff. Our policy, fully embraced by Democrats and Republicans alike, was to help Ukraine become a stable and independent democratic state, along with a market economy integrated into Europe. Ukraine is a sovereign country whose borders are inviolate, and whose people have the right to determine their own destiny. These are the bedrock principles of our policy. It is critical to the security of the United States that Ukraine remain free and democratic, and that it continue to resist Russian expansionism. Since 2014, Ukraine has been at war, not just with Russia, but within itself, as political and economic forces compete to determine what kind of country Ukraine will become. During the 2019 presidential elections in Ukraine, the people answered that question once again. Angered by insufficient progress in the fight against corruption, Ukraine voters overwhelmingly voted for a man who said ending corruption would be his number one priority. That would be Ukraine President Zelensky, the man under a death threat from Putin today. This is an article by Brendan Kennedy of the Toronto Star, dated February 25, 2022. What role did Ukraine's desire to join NATO play in Putin's decision to invade the country? Ukraine has been angling to join NATO for many years, it lobbied unsuccessfully for membership in 2008, but those plans were shelved following the election of a pro-Russian government. When that government was overthrown in the 2014 Ukrainian Revolution, Ukraine resumed its goal of joining the alliance. That goal is now enshrined in the country's constitution. Putin warned in his speech that it was only a matter of time before that goal was reached, which is partly why he says he had to strike. Putin has demanded NATO close the door to any future possibility of Ukraine's membership, but the alliance has refused, standing by its founding articles, which allow any eligible European country to be invited by the alliance and prohibit interference in those decisions from third countries. This is from the UK Sun. Why is Ukraine not in NATO? Story was dated February 25, 2022. President Putin has previously stated his vehement opposition to a NATO expansion. Russia sees Ukraine as highly strategic as it tries to hang on to its sphere of influence with countries on its western borders. Putin has previously issued threats to Ukraine, which included invasion, unless the state promised not to join NATO. February 2, 2022. This is from Bloomberg. Trump ally asks Biden to drop support for Ukraine joining NATO. A Republican senator and possible 2024 presidential contender drew wide criticism for asking the Biden administration to abandon long-standing U.S. support for Ukraine to eventually join NATO. In a letter on Tuesday to Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Hawley wrote that the U.S. should shift resources from secondary theaters like Eastern Europe and focus instead on countering China. Russia, in turn, has decried the presence of NATO troops near Russian borders. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki suggested that Hawley was, quote, parroting Russian talking points, unquote. This is from USA Today, November 14, 2019. President Trump's instincts on Ukraine have been bad, but he's right about one thing. U.S. policy for years has been to add key adversaries of Russia to NATO and the Western political stage. But is that wise? The concept of NATO expansion, which dates to the Clinton administration, has incensed Putin. In fairness to President Bill Clinton as well as George W. Bush, it was one thing when NATO expansion brought into the Western community countries like Poland, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, and even the Baltic states. But it is something else altogether to bring into NATO a former core part of the Soviet Union whose history is so closely intertwined with Russia's own. What's worse, NATO promised eventual membership to Ukraine and Georgia, with no timetable or action plan for how that might happen and no interim security guarantee. Completing the package of perverse incentives, NATO has also maintained its long-standing policy that, to be eligible for alliance membership, a country must have resolved territorial disputes with neighbors, no matter whose fault those disputes may be. Here is the presidential phone call between President Donald Trump and newly elected Ukrainian President Zelensky. President Zelensky to Donald Trump. The United States is a much bigger partner than the European Union, and I'm very grateful to you for that because the United States is doing quite a lot for Ukraine, much more than the European Union, especially when we are talking about sanctions against the Russian Federation. I would also like to thank you for your great support in the area of defense. We are ready to continue to cooperate for the next steps. Specifically, we are almost ready to buy more javelins from the United States for defense purposes. The Daily Beast. Biden tells Putin where to shove his red lines. By Noor Ibrahim, December 7, 2021. President Joe Biden was crystal clear on the consequences Russia will face should Moscow decide to invade Ukraine, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said in a press briefing following a 2-hour-long video call between Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. We still have no transcript of this phone call to determine what Biden said to Putin. Biden told President Putin directly that if Russia further invades Ukraine, The United States and our European allies would respond with strong economic measures, said Sullivan. We would provide additional defensive material to the Ukrainians above and beyond that which we already are provided, and we would fortify our NATO allies on the eastern flank with additional capabilities in response to such an escalation. The virtual summit came just days after an explosive intelligence analysis, first reported by the Washington Post, revealed that Moscow could be planning to launch a 175,000 troop offensive against Ukraine early next year, which would be 2022. Leading up to the talk, Putin had warned Biden against crossing his red lines when it comes to Ukraine, seeking a guarantee that NATO forces would neither expand into Eastern Europe nor allow Ukraine to join as a member. Biden's response to that: I don't accept anybody's red lines. I'll say that again. Biden said to Putin in December of 2021, I don't accept anybody's red lines. According to Sullivan, Russia will have to deal with more than just sanctions in the case of a further offensive against Ukraine, and Washington isn't ruling out the possibility of deploying more U.S. troops to help protect Baltic allies in case of a Russian invasion by Ukraine. They will be seeking, we expect, additional capabilities and potentially additional deployments, and the United States will be looking to respond positively to those things in the event that there is a further incursion into Ukraine, said Sullivan, who later added that Biden made no commitments or concessions to Russian demands to block Ukraine from joining NATO. So my question here is, did Biden's video call in December 2021 give Putin a casus belli, a cause for war? Year after year, since at least 2008, Putin warned that if Ukraine signed a defense pact with the West, he would invade the Ukraine. U.S. Department of State, U.S.-Ukraine Charter on Strategic Partnership, Media Note, Office of the Spokesperson, November 10th, 2021. So this is a month before the video call between Joe Biden and Vladimir Putin. The following is the text of the U.S.-Ukraine Charter on Strategic Partnership, signed by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his Ukrainian counterpart on November 10, 2021. Preamble: the United States and Ukraine reaffirm the importance of our relationship as friends and strategic partners, emphasize unwavering commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders, including Crimea and extending to its territorial waters in the face of ongoing Russian aggression, which threatens regional peace and stability and undermines the global rules-based order. Affirm the commitments made to strengthen the U.S.-Ukraine strategic partnership by Presidents Zelensky and Biden on September 1st, 2021. My God, Joe Biden caused the Ukraine invasion by Russia. The moment this agreement was signed by Biden's Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his Ukraine counterpart, Putin gave the order to move and reclaim what he and all his generals believed was theirs all along. So, to summarize, Donald Trump had the correct Ukraine policy. No war, no invasion, no collapse of world economies, no threat of World War III. Joe Biden just lurched us onto a path of all of the above. Nobody told Biden to stop, and he has nothing but a team of political hacks running the show there in the White House. People who believed their only threat this year was from Virginia school parents speaking out at board meetings, Border Patrol agents on horseback, and Canadian truck drivers with funny ideas about freedom and personal liberty. Biden signed a security agreement with Ukraine just 4 months ago. The moment it hit Putin's desk, he gave the order to mobilize for invasion. Joe Biden caused this entire mess. All of the blood on Putin's hands is equally and fully shared by Joseph R. Biden and his clueless team of Obama-era diplomats. Take a bow, Team Biden. You did this to Ukraine, and the rest of the world. If Joe Biden had any integrity, he would resign over this. Thank you.